I want to. Is that on?
Thank all those who put time and effort into putting the program together. Special thanks to Alan. I'm sure you've noticed the gold theme due to the fact that when you read about the golden calf, that's why there's gold.
I have to start over again.
I'm gonna have to start. I think Alan did the camera. Did he do the camera?
Yeah. It's been going for a half hour.
Half hour? What does that mean? Okay, I'm going to be talking for about a half hour. Now, although the main topic of the Parsha relates to the golden calf, I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. It is in the Parsha. It's mentioned there due to the fact that this is a Parsha of a fall. We address that which brings us up and together. So if you do have your Chumash, you don't really have to open it. In other words, it was schlepped up, and I do thank you, but I'm going to be reading a verse you are very familiar with because we say it every Shabbos. And we're going to try to understand it. So it's basically a verse or two that is part of our prayer every Shabbos. 25 years ago I was in Chile. We lived in Chile. And there was a local fellow there, fascinating character. His name was actually Moshe Yankel, which works well in any story. But his name was Moshe Yankel. Now Moshe Yankel Berry believed that he's the greatest chazan in South America, perhaps in the world. And when he would introduce himself, he would say, "My name is Moshe Yankel Berry," and then he would start singing Af Beri, which comes from Tfilas Geshem. And he loved leading our small congregation in the Kol Friday night. And the greatest piece of chazonis of Moshe Yankel was V'shamru bnei Yisrael esasha habos. I would not do it with his tune and his length, but for Moshe Yankel it was a highlight. We're going to analyze those few words. V'shamru bnei Yisrael esasha habos. Lasos esasha habos l'daron samri solom. We're going to focus on those words. So let's first understand them. That the people of Israel, after being commanded, they actually observed the Shabbos. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es ha-Shabbos. And then the next three words are la'asot et ha-Shabbat, to quote-unquote make the Shabbos. What does it mean to make the Shabbos? We understand what it means to observe it, so much part of who we are. But what does it mean to make the Shabbos? That's the question that I'm going to ask, and that's all we need from text. What does it mean, la'asos es ha-Shabbos? And what we're going to do in the next 28 minutes is present 4 explanations. There are many, many more. Commentators have focused on it. What does it mean, la'asot et ha-Shabbat? Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're starting with number 1. A couple of months ago in the news, there was a big to-do about an El Al flight that left, I think it was JFK, on a Thursday evening, and due to a snowstorm got delayed, or due to a snowstorm, some of the flight crew got delayed, and there was a to-do because there was a miscommunication between the pilot and people who were on board, and it did not make it to Israel, and they spent Shabbos in Athens. And every once in a while you do hear stories of flights going towards Eretz Yisrael, scheduled to arrive on Friday, and when a few things go wrong, right, the result is that you have a challenge there. This is a question that I think I'm not the only one that at one point struggled with. A flight going to Israel, arriving on Friday. To do or not to do? Do we take it or do we not take it? Some people like gambling. Others don't. The one time I had to do it, I was uncomfortable. Now, once you take off, your odds are good. Once you take off, leaving Toronto, on that, what is it, a 5:45 El Al flight, and you're in the air, you're a little bit settled, but up until that point, you're a little bit nervous. The one time I had to do it was when I merited to have that trip about 4 or 5 years ago, the Harper trip. So you remember that? And I had to be there for Sunday, and as a result, the only option was that Thursday night, arriving Erev Shabbos, noon, 4 or 5 hours before Shabbos. I did it with discomfort and guilt, the real Jewish way of travel, right? But this is something we should be mindful of. And based on that, Ibn Ezra and other commentators note that we as good Torah Jews, our observance of Shabbos does not start with Shabbos, but throughout the week we are mindful of Shabbos. For the idea, for example, of purchasing good food for Shabbos. You see it on Sunday, you see it on Monday, maybe the challah not, but if you do find some kind of enjoyable soda or beer that you cannot find other times, and you purchase it in honor of Shabbos, that indeed is preparing for Shabbos from Sunday, Monday, and therefore, the way the verse can be read is Vishamru b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos. Jews should observe Shabbos, but it should be done throughout the week that they could actually make Shabbos. Don't make decisions during the week that are going to affect your ability to make a proper Shabbos. When it comes to travel, when it comes to hotel arrangements, be mindful of Shabbos throughout the week. Remember in Memphis, there was a member of the community who had some kind of, it was a conference or a course that was taken in Chicago, and he got on a plane during the summer, a good 6 hours before Shabbos from Chicago to Memphis, which is a short flight, but it's O'Hare, and if you are familiar with O'Hare, you are familiar with delays. And he was delayed sitting on the plane, right, on the runway for hours upon hours, where he arrived basically as Shabbos came in. And he had to walk 14 miles from the airport to East Memphis, through neighborhoods that I highly recommend you avoid, and it would be questionable if it was a wise decision or not, but be mindful of that. Be practicing your Judaism by being mindful of Shabbos to make Shabbos. That's explanation number 1. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos during the week, la'asos es Shabbos. So we are a quarter through. We got explanation number 1. Now it's time for explanation 2. Pesach. You know that we are 2 months away? You want to hear that? 2 months away. Yep, it's up. Tomorrow is Purim Katan, and then you got a month from now Purim, and then we are celebrating Pesach in 2 months. And the Seder night is that magical night when we have that incredible ability to talk about the Haggadah, transmit it to the next generation, to the future. It's a magical moment indeed that we have, and we have to feel privileged. I was reading that in Israel, in Tel Aviv, people felt that there was a great movie they were able to take their kids because it brought generations together. Now, what was the great movie that they were able to take their kids, that the kids could suddenly appreciate the music they grew up with, the concerts they showed up at, the people they worshipped? How can they bring generations together? So in the early 1980s, late 1970s, there was a rock group, I think it was Queen. I don't know if he was the singer, or it's Freddie Mercury, okay, from the Gdolim of that industry. So there was a movie about him that came out recently. So the excitement that existed by some was that they could take their kids and suddenly the kids walk out, Baruch Hashem, we can bond with the next generation by having Queen being played at home. And you think about what's taking place in society, that there is indeed this tremendous gap between youth and their parents. Right? There's a great gap. The interest of the young person has absolutely nothing to do with the parent, right? Parents, perhaps if they're lucky, the kids will allow them into their chat groups, but only if they're lucky, because reality is the generations have created this great barrier between children and parents. And when we look at what's occurring in society, we have to realize how privileged we are that we see the next generation appreciating and valuing what we value. Right? V'heshiv lev avos al banim, that there's Torah, that there's Judaism, that there's a Seder night, that you could see the next generation coming with questions and answers, just as we came with questions and answers a few years ago, a few decades ago. We have to feel privileged. There's something so special about it indeed. But you gotta do it right. You gotta do it right. You want to transmit to the next generation, do it right. My mother likes sharing this story. You know, she grew up with a Yekisha father, a real Yekisha father. My Zayde was the real Yek. So the Seder night was a very dry night for the Yekim, and I have to be careful here in case there are a few Yekis among the Hungarians here. But it was a very dry night. My Zayde was a God-fearing Jew, and if you gotta explain the Haggadah, you have to explain it in detail. And if the 8-year-old girl is not so interested, yes, she has a problem, because I have that obligation to transmit. And my mother shares how she would sit there during the Seder, holding in her fingers the sections, the pages they already read, and holding in her other 2 fingers the sections they're going to read. And with excitement as the evening would pass, she would notice how the section that passed is getting bigger, and the section that is ahead of us is getting smaller. That was her simcha of the Haggadah. That's what she noticed. And with all due respect, you know, to my tremendous Zaydi, and he inspired me a lot, and he inspired my mother a lot as well, the reality is that if you want to preserve Judaism, if you want the next generation to be interested, it has to be done in a way that is exciting, right? You have to be familiar with what the next generation needs. Be familiar with their language, with what interests them. Sometimes it's games, right? Sometimes it's props. Sometimes it's all kind of shtick that people do at the Seder that is indeed necessary and required. Be sure that they are interested. And therefore, when it comes to Shabbos, it is V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos. You know, observe the Shabbos, no question about it. But don't make it into a burden, right? Don't make it into this major pain that everything the child does, he's concerned that the parent is going to go ahead and eat their head off because it wasn't done properly. I remember there was a girl that told me in Mexico, and I was probably 9 years old, and this girl told me that if she would by mistake on Shabbos turn off the light in a washroom on Shabbos, she would turn it back on. Why? Because the reaction of my father would be so intense, I couldn't deal with it. So it's better to go ahead and turn back the light on Shabbos than have to deal with the reaction of my father. This is what I said. So there's a flaw there. There is a flaw there because yes, you are Shamru es HaShabbos, Shamru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbos, but is it going to be handed over that in the future, La'asot et HaShabbat, will Shabbos be practiced in the future? Right? How do we make Shabbos exciting? Well, food. Food is important, right? Good foods. Are there things at home, right, that are only there for Shabbos? Many homes have that, and it's incredible. That's what creates that environment that will have a La'asos es HaShabbos, right? You know, there's a story that there was a worker, a non-Jewish worker that lived somewhere in Brooklyn, and he worked for one of the kosher stores for many, many years, and he would bring up, after people would come in and make a large purchase, he would assist them in schlepping the boxes up into their apartments. And he had a tradition that after he would bring up the heavy boxes into the apartment, he would turn to the Jews. So this African American would turn to the Jews and would say, Shver Suzana Goy. Train him to Shver Suzana Goy. Now, we are more familiar with the Shver Suzana Yid, right? Hard to be Jewish. We have to be careful with that statement. Because if the next generation only views our relationship to our faith as something that brings about difficulty, why would they be interested in preserving it? Make it exciting, right? Make it something that they want to keep up. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es Shabbos, keep the Shabbos, no question about it. Sometimes, by the way, it includes that you have to bring about some leniencies. There are leniencies. You don't want to make religion in general, and perhaps Shabbos more than anything else, for the next generation, you have to sense that if they're going to be overwhelmed by a stringency, that Vishamru is not going to lead to la'asos. That observance is not going to lead to them doing it in the future. So therefore, the goal of Shabbos is make it something that we wait for. And I know, I interact with many people that say straight out, I wouldn't manage without Shabbos. Right? Nowadays with technology, there is no such thing as getting away. Right? There's an expectation that you answer your phone anytime. Right? You always can be taking care of things because you can always email something. It used to be between 9 and 5, and perhaps after 5:36, you could stop thinking about that, what you need to fix. That's what you have with that, what you have to address. Forget about banking, because what bank was open after 6 o'clock. With our new world, that things are non-stop, 24 hours a day, thank God there is a Shabbos. And that's what children have to feel, that it is a blessing, a gift. Then you will have a Shamru Bnei Yisrael es HaShabbos, La'asos es HaShabbos. Okay, so I think we have two explanations already. Okay, one is be mindful during the week. Number two, be sure to have the positive attitude. Explanation number 3. Shabbos is unique with its prayers. You know that. That when Friday night, usually when it comes to a Chag, when it comes to a Yom Tov, the prayers are the same prayers. Right? Shabbos is unique that the theme Friday night is different than the theme Shabbos morning. The theme of our Shmoneh Esrei Shabbos morning is different than the theme of Shabbos Mincha. And actually, we focus on not one and not two, but 3 different Shabbatot. We talk about creation, and that is achieved Friday night, Vayachulu Hashemayim V'Aretz. Shabbos morning, we talk about our personal Shabbos, the fact that we as a nation left Egypt, we were given Shabbos, and that preserved our identity, the Jewish Shabbos, that relates back to the Exodus. And then Mincha, we talk about the future Shabbos. We talk about what we call Yom Shekulo Shabbat Limnucha, the Messianic era, Olam Haba, the world to come. You know, there's a big market in the greater New York area for what's known as Thursday night cholent. You're familiar with that? Thursday, there's a gas station supposedly, where is it, Muncie or something? Muncie. That you can get Thursday night cholent. So you can already destroy your system. You don't have to wait for Shabbos afternoon. You can already do it Thursday night, which is really magnificent. Now, where does it come from? This idea of a Thursday night cholent. So there is a concept known as To'amea Chaim Zachu. We say it in our prayer. And it seems to be that there's a great merit in tasting Shabbos food before Shabbos. Tasting, not finishing it, right? Not creating a whole cholent and eating it and claiming you are tasting it, but giving it a taste. If you have a dignitary coming to visit, you want to be sure that the food is good, so you taste beforehand. So too, Shabbos is arriving. We want to be sure that the food is good. Taste it to be sure that indeed it's going to be enjoyable. To'amea chaim zachu. Okay, that's the idea behind it. So it's a taste, a little bit. Now, I once asked my father, what's the idea behind it? What does it symbolize? So he noted that we are believers. We state this over and over again that Shabbat is me'en olam haba. It's a little bit of the world to come. Just as the world to come, it's a time that we don't focus on the physical, we focus on the spiritual, a relationship with God. There's a calm. so too on Shabbos we get a little bit of a taste of the world to come. So just as we have a taste of the world to come on Shabbos, so during the 6 days of the week that symbolize the world we live in, we taste a little bit of Shabbos. Symbolically, it does indeed represent something quite great. The world to come. So now, there's actually a statement in the Jerusalem Talmud. Kol hato'em tafshilo be'erev Shabbat. Anyone who does taste his food on Erev Shabbat, ma'arichin lo yamav u'shnotav. It's a skula. It's a skula for a long time. Now again, don't finish it. Happens a little bit, and we're familiar with the stories of those, who enjoy it too much. But a little bit of a taste, it's a nice thing to do, and keep the messages in mind. So based on that, explains the commentary, Bavadia Sforno. V'shamru bnei Yisrael et Shabbat. That when we observe the Shabbat, you know what we're doing? Le'asot et Shabbat b'yom shekulo Shabbat. In other words, we are making for ourselves the future Shabbat, the world to come. So again, Vishamru, observe the Shabbat, because by doing that you are making for yourself a future. Yom Shekula Shabbos, the Olam Haba. You want an Olam Haba, you want a world to come, you want your neshama to benefit. Keep the Shabbos, treat it with respect, observe it, then. So that's how he reads the second half of the verse. An interesting explanation by a commentator that in general goes with the Pshat, but what we walk away with is 3 explanations out of 4. What's the last explanation? In Kiddush, we say the following, that Shabbat is Friday night. Kiddush is Tchila Lemikra'ei Kodesh. Tchila, Shabbat is Tchila, right, is the beginning or the starter of Mikra'ei Kodesh, of the days that we call out as holy. What does it refer to? Some people have the practice to say Ki hu yom tchila mikra'ei kodesh. Others skip those Ki hu yom tchila. But everyone declares Friday night that we are keeping the Shabbos, and this is a starter, and this is what sets in motion the holy days. What does it refer to? So Shabbos in the Torah makes its appearance before the Yamim Tovim, before the holidays is mentioned. The Torah mentions keep the Shabbos. So on a basic level, Shabbos is Tchila Lemikra'ei Kodesh. Fine. However, there's a fascinating insight shared by Reb Tzadok HaKohen from Lublin, a great 19th century thinker, and he says the following. It's fundamental to be successful in life, and it's fundamental to achieve what our religion wants from us by appreciating what we could achieve, appreciating the self. Self-value is fundamental. And it is so important in a religious community to emphasize, you are good, you could achieve things, you are important, you are significant. And this must be drilled in to adults, but obviously so much more to children. You are good. And why do I say by a religious community it's more important? Because religion has a major problem. Religion wants us to live by specific practices. Sometimes we fail. I have a feeling I am not the only person in the room that has made some mistakes, right? That has not practiced my Judaism the way I should. So what happens? So my educator at times is going to be focusing on that mistake and give me a musar shmuz, if you are familiar with one. Make me feel like ashum blotte. How do you translate that? Like a piece of, like something in the mud, right? I made a mistake. I'm no good. I made some bad decisions. I gave in to temptation. So I'm a good for nothing. I heard it. I was told I'm a good for nothing because when the mashgiach, when the spiritual guide talked in yeshiva about bad things that you do as a 13, 14-year-old, I was up there. I was a member of that community. And when he declared that those who do such things are bad, I'm bad. So what has been planted in my head at a very young age? I'm no good. I'm no good because I'm not keeping the standards. I'm not like the great rabbinic figures who were perfect. But nevertheless, right? That's what I was presented to me. There are the great people, and then there are those who failed. And I'm a member of the failed community. That's what religious does. Religion does that. It's a fact. It's a sad fact. How do you deal with that? You deal with drilling into a young person, an old person, to everyone. You have value. It's nothing to do with being Jewish. Every single human being has value. We have a privilege that we have a mission to teach such lessons to humanity. But the human being has value, so fundamental. And it's so problematic when it's not focused on. And if you want to know where in our tradition do we find the value of a person, Yom Tov, believe it or not. Why? When Shabbos is on the 7th day of the week, a system and a cycle established by God Almighty, Yom Tov cannot come into existence without the human being declaring this is a new month. You know that. You need a court in Jerusalem of humans, of people. Flawed people because God created people with flaws. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu created us with the Yetzer Hara. But you make a mistake, you do tshuva, you're a great person again. God said that Yom Tov becomes a Yom Tov because there was someone 2 weeks earlier that declared, humans who declare. It's a new month, and that's how we have Chagim. If we do not have humans, we don't have Chagim. Chagim are so significant because humans, Mekadesh, Yisrael, V'azmanim. That's what we say on the Chag. 2 months from now, keep it in mind. We are sanctified. We the people, we're sanctified. There's something precious about us. There's something incredible about what we could do. And as a result of that, we could sanctify those days. Now, Shabbat is Tchila Lemikra'e Kodesh. Shabbat is the starter. Shabbat is a time that gives us that sanctity and understanding that we are significant, and then we can go ahead and sanctify the holidays. Meaning, the goal of Shabbat is to tell, a person to tell himself, and obviously the next generation, and obviously children that need to hear these things, you have value. Do you know how many stories there are of people that got their confidence from standing at a Friday night meal and saying the Dvar Torah? Do you know how many stories there are that the attention given by the parents, because we are running throughout the week, right? In this day and age, right, do you really sit by a meal during the work week at dinner and just sit there for 45 minutes having the one conversation, right? While on Shabbat we have this great privilege that everything shuts down, everything shuts off. We focus on giving that attention. And the purpose of that attention is understand you are significant. The whole world is yours because you are reading now your Parsha questions. You are now sharing the Dvar Torah, or perhaps you are sharing a story, or perhaps you are just being told a story and you are interested, you are bonding. You give the boost to the human being with Shabbat. And as a result of that, we can turn around. When you have self-value, you could achieve things. And then you have a sanctified Israel, which can sanctify the Chag. Now, we call Chagim, by the way, also Yom Shabbaton. Chagim, our holidays, are also Shabbat, days of rest. They are days of rest. With that, notes Reb Tzadok HaKohen the following. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat. Observe the Shabbos. Have a Shabbos. Right? Sit together Friday night. Enjoy the wonderful foods, delicacies, whatever you do enjoy, right? If you come from a school that believes that a Shabbos meal is not a Shabbos meal without gefilte fish, have your gefilte fish. If you're come from a different school that you believe that sushi is also fish, you could have sushi. Be sure the children enjoy it. Be sure that it brings people together. Be sure it creates an environment that inspires the child to recognize their value. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael es ha-Shabbos. You know what's going to happen as a result of that? la'asot et Shabbat. Then they could go ahead and make the other Shabbos, referring to Yom Tov. Then they could go ahead and realize the value of a human, the value of what we can achieve, and then we could go ahead and sanctify Yom Tov, because there won't be a Yom Tov if Jews feel I'm achieving nothing, let's just retire, forget what's the purpose of existence, right? What do we need to be here for, right? Why have continuity? You're not going to have a Yom Tov, because there won't be the Jewish people to sanctify that day. V'shomru b'nei Yisrael es HaShabbos, that the result should be la'asot et HaShabbat. Give them the boost understanding of their significance, and then they're going to go ahead and keep the other Shabbos, referring to Yom Tov. Tchila le'mikro kodesh. Think about that when you say Kiddush. That this is the day, it's the starter to create the days where we declare its sanctity, the Chagim. One of the most important statements in Pirkei Avot is the one of Al tihi rasha bifnei atzmecha. Never view yourself as an evil person. Right? When I was driving once with my son Aaron, and there was next to us a car that every section of it was scratched and damaged, right? Everything. I told him those are the most dangerous drivers to be next to. Because the person who is driving his perfect car with no scratches is careful how he drives. He doesn't want to damage his car. That fellow has nothing to lose. So he might try to come into our lane suddenly, because what's the worst thing that can happen? He's going to have dent number 92. He's not so concerned, right? And so too, when we value ourselves, right, when we understand our significance of what we can achieve, of what we can do in life, we're careful, right? We are careful with what we do. We are careful how we act, because we are significant. I am significant, by the way. I'm a very significant being, and I mean it. But so are you, and so is everyone, because we have the ability to achieve things in life. The worst thing we could do is to look in the mirror and think we are looking at a rasha. That's a major problem. It's a major problem, and that should be the core and the foundation of Jewish education. That you are important, you could achieve things, you are incredible. Look what you could do. And you have a mission that's tailored for you. You don't have to be like anyone else, right? And that's what Shabbos achieves. And therefore we identify ourselves as Shomerei Shabbos. That's what we are about. Observing the Shabbos, because it gives us our identity. So we have presented for you 4 readings of this statement. And hopefully we can take this positive message from what we read in this week's Parsha, a very necessary message before we read about the golden calf. We can't deal with failure if we don't first give ourselves the boost. Shabbos is that boost. So we're here Monday, we have a whole week to prepare, and indeed, may our preparations go well. I do thank everyone for coming. I think it was a nice thing to come together as a family here on Family Day. So we wish everyone a happy Family Day, and tomorrow is Purim Katan. And I mentioned Shalashudas, that there's a tradition of eating something extra in honor of Purim Katan. If you were there, Shalashudas, you'll know that I recommended to eat something that relates to France. Why specifically something that relates to France? Anyone remember? Because the 13th century authority who tells us that it should be, even the Purim Katan, Yemei Mishteh V'Simcha, was Rabbi Yechiel from Paris. From Paris, or Yechiel from Paris, a great luminary from hundreds of years ago. So I think to commemorate, but that's, you don't worry about it. Don't run out today in bad weather and start looking for croissants. But nevertheless, the idea is it's a season, it's an uplifting season that we need to be uplifted by. So let's celebrate together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alan, and all those who put time and effort and energy. And I wish you all a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And we'll see you in the future. Thank you. That's all for us.